some you could tell there was some part of their humanity that was being nourished, and it was a practice of rejoicing. And I think it's important, even though the topic tonight is how to work with difficult emotions, they're the gateway. They're the gateway to our Buddha nature. They're the gateway to the heart and the mind of wisdom and of compassion. All those difficult emotions. But they're also what allow us to fully experience the range of our humanity. Practice isn't to get rid of emotions or to get rid of being human. It's how to learn to live into our full potential, to have access to all of our humanity, without all the picking and choosing. So the Mahayana path, the path of the Bodhisattva, the courageous ones, are the ones that kind of, they make this vow that they're going to use all the circumstances in their life to awaken these qualities. These qualities of love, of compassion, of wisdom. And that's why we're here. And it's hard. It's hard because it feels a little hard because it means we have to open to the whole thing. We have to be able to open up to the whole thing. So how do you do this? How do you do it? Let's talk about that tonight. Because that's how we find all the joy. So there's this idea that we have to accept, right? We have to accept whatever life brings. And that's a kind of funny concept I was thinking about. It's a little bit tricky because it has this connotation that you have to put this kind of effort in, and that there are things to accept and things to reject. And I think the big question the Buddha would say, well, who is it that's trying to accept or reject in the first place? The Buddha would say, look for that one. Try to find that one. It's a good inquiry, and I think the poor ego gets labeled as the one, that's kind of running the whole game, that has all this preference. And it's interesting because it feels like there's an effort associated with accepting, but really there's this effort associated with how do we disarm the ego? How do we interrupt the ego that's like running around, pushing and pulling, trying to control, trying to get its way, trying to have things happen according to plan? There's a lot of suing. If you make yourself an action word, there's a lot of that happening, and that's sort of the domain of the ego, but it's actually in the non-doing that we find our true nature. So this is one of the kind of paradoxes in this world of wisdom, this world of awakening wisdom. There are some verses that Tilopa, who is this great Mahasiddha, gave to Naropa, who was one of these also amazing, went on to become an amazing teacher who wanted instruction on waking up, on being free, how to be liberated. And he talked in this instruction it's called the Ganges of Mahamudra. I've had many teachings on these, and there's a verse that came to mind when I thought about this idea of accepting and who is it who's accepting. And this verse says, allow the water muddied by thoughts to settle naturally. without affirming or negating what arises. Leave it as it is. When there is no acceptance or rejection, appearances are liberated into Mahamudra. When there is no acceptance or rejection, appearances are liberated into Mahamudra. He also said he said, son, it's not appearances that bind you. Appearances as in the world that arises. That isn't, we think that's what's binding us, but that isn't what binds us. He said it's your clinging, it's your grasping, it's your wanting to control, it's your wanting it to be different. That is what binds you. So the practice is leaving it in its natural place, allowing it to settle without being the one who's trying to accept or reject. This is a very profound place, and Mahamudra is really similar to Dzogchen in a way. Is just another way to talk about Buddha nature or Buddha mind, or the natural state. It's kind of a wise way of being in the world, and it's this non-doing awareness that we can tap into through meditation, when this concentrated state of mind, this mindful attention on whatever is arising, when it doesn't get involved, when it doesn't get all caught up in whatever those things that are bubbling up in the mind are, when it can simply sit in not rejecting and not accepting, and just be this open sort of non-doing awareness. There's a kind of knowing presence that's available to us all the time, and that presence is free. It has never created anything. It doesn't reject and it doesn't accept. It's like the analogy that they often use, or the metaphor they often use, is the sky. This kind of non-doing awareness is like the sky. The sky doesn't create the weather. It doesn't reject the storm clouds. It doesn't grab on to the sunshine and the blue, But it's there, it's yielding, it's in continual relationship. So in a way, how we work with difficult emotions, this is how we practice with them. Can we not accept or not reject? Can we allow them to arise and dissolve naturally? What we care about. And the reality is, the more of our own difficulty, the more we can hold our own experience with this tender, quivering heart of compassion, the more we actually have the ability to be there with another person. Because guess what? When someone you really love is suffering or struggling with something, it activates inside of you a lot of turbulence. The untrained mind gets very turbulent, may not even know how much turbulence is there. It just moves into, I have to fix, I have to give advice, I have to help them change this, I have to do this, I have to do that. It goes into that whole swirl. And there's, Thich Nhat Hanh says the most generous thing and the most impactful thing we can do is to be present for each other, to give the gift of presence. So if you've been able to be there for yourself, if you have trained, if you have stayed on the cushion and trained in being able to be there for yourself, then when that gets activated, you'll see it rising up in you, and you'll be able to meet it with a little bit of warmth, a little bit of care, a little bit of tenderness. And that tenderness provides a powerful, powerful presence to the one you love, And then you don't know. You have no idea how you'll respond. But without a doubt, your response will be healing. It will be healing in a way that all the advice of the world could never, ever offer. And you could be the mirror, you could be the bridge, you could be the ability for that person to be with their own experience with tenderness too. And that's really all maybe they need, is to be able to touch into some part of that without trying to change it. Again, it's not accepting or rejecting. It's just an open, flowing, quality. It's the ease of an open heart. So I guess my closing message is that we can be the holder and the held for ourselves and for the whole world, And this practice of prayer is a way to surrender. This practice of not accepting, not rejecting, dropping the judging mind, finding a way to rest in tender presence is a way to work with these really strong experiences. And maybe learning how to leave it in love, leave it in equanimity. If we have these little prompts available in our minds, if we can integrate them into our way of being, then our practice is with us all the time.